Major Garrett is with the Trump campaign in Beaufort, South Carolina. Hey, Major.
Hello, how are you?
Good. You know, we haven't really heard remarks this direct from President Obama when it comes to the election. It's interesting, though, when you look at that, the president could have sidestepped, answered a different way. He didn't. I mean, he really kind of let loose there. Could there be a political strategy here, Major, in trying to elevate, in a sense, Donald Trump?
Oh, yes. I suspect there is a two-leveled political strategy. One, to antagonize Trump supporters to drive up his support. Why? Because the president is calculating if Trump becomes the Republican nominee, whoever the Democratic nominee is likely to win. And the second part of that strategy was giving a general election assessment of what Trump would bring to the table, strengths and weaknesses as a potential commander-in-chief. Strengths, celebrity, reality TV stardom, and an ability to promote oneself. Weaknesses, all the things we just heard the president outline, are fundamental to the job of commander-in-chief. So what you heard is the president knowing his criticism of Trump will antagonize Trump supporters, make them more likely to turn out. So he's baiting them, okay, for a very direct political reason. So Trump wins, or Trump is more likely to win. Because the Republicans and what they decide is not something the president is trying to encourage. President Obama is not a supporter of the Republican primary presidential process. If a Republican president was in, they wouldn't be supportive of the Democratic primary presidential process either. It's not an accusation, it's just a political fact. And so it's a two-tiered argument. One, Republicans, I'm going to tell you you're wrong, and you're misreading this guy, and all these votes you've cast for Donald Trump are made in error. What's that going to do? Antagonize them. And the second thing is laying the predicate for a general election conversation about Trump. And the president's going to weigh in on that as president of the United States, but also on behalf of whomever the Democrats ultimately nominate, whether it's Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders. So the president, as you said, could have sidestepped this, but he decided to put himself right in the middle of two conversations, the Republican primary conversation, and later, to be able to reach back to these comments, come a general election.
All right, Major, we want to play some sound from the past few days. We've noticed that Marco Rubio and Donald Trump are launching almost identical attacks on Ted Cruz. Take a listen.
He's the biggest liar. I've seen some that are much more cunning because you wouldn't catch him. I mean, this guy lies, but he got caught every time.
He's lied about my record on Planned Parenthood. He's lied about my position on marriage. He's lied about his own record on immigration.
With the Cruz thing, I just wanted to tell you, he's a really bad liar.
Difference is you called Senator Cruz a liar.
Well, he's lying. I mean, just making things up.
But he's a liar. So he'll go up and he'll absolutely lie.
All right, Major, what's behind these similar attacks?
So, first of all, we had a lot of Cruz is a liar accusations there. Let me just give you the Cruz perspective on all this. Ted Cruz says, look, Donald Trump gets angry when I say to people he once called himself pro-choice. True fact, Donald Trump did. Now he says he's pro-life, but Ted Cruz says, I remind people what Donald Trump used to say about abortion, a very important issue here in South Carolina. Ted Cruz says, I remind people what Donald Trump used to say about universal health care. He was in favor of it. Now, Trump wants to appeal Obamacare. There are instances where Ted Cruz points to things that Trump has said in the past that are true. Trump says, I don't believe them now, and that's what matters. On the Rubio allegations, there was an ad that was put together here in South Carolina against Marco Rubio by a group supporting Ted Cruz. It was deemed factually inaccurate by several stations here in South Carolina and pulled down. That's one of Rubio's attacks against Cruz, that this ad simply is untrue. He makes things up. Also, there's a good conversation going on here about Rubio's abortion record. The National Right to Life League has said Cruz has been dishonest about Rubio's position on this. So all of this is getting adjudicated almost hour by hour here in South Carolina. And for Trump, saying that Ted Cruz, who is his closest competitor in South Carolina, is a liar is sort of a blanket way of saying, deny this guy the victory here in South Carolina because nothing he says is true. For Rubio, it's a much more long-term argument with Ted Cruz because Rubio is fighting to become the challenger to Donald Trump. And to do that, he needs to run close with Ted Cruz in each and every contest. South Carolina on Saturday and the large number of March 1st primaries, primarily in the South, but also elsewhere. So he also needs to raise questions about Cruz's character and his essential honesty and approach to politics. I will say one other thing, Elaine. Here in South Carolina, they play politics pretty rough. And Cruz's name has popped up in some pretty rough tactics so far this week. Fake Facebook posts about endorsements that have been withdrawn, very aggressive hostile robocalls that are meant to intimidate people if they don't support Ted Cruz, and other things that are part of the hardball history of politics here. Lots of people practice them. It's not all Ted Cruz, but his name does crop up more than anyone else's, and that's another thing that Trump and Rubio are trying to bring attention to.
Certainly something we'll keep an eye on. Let me ask you this. Donald Trump is leading by 16 points in a poll of likely South Carolina voters, but he also has wide margins. Voters were asked who could best handle the following issues: the economy, illegal immigration, and foreign policy. Only on social issues, interestingly, does he lag behind Ted Cruz. So given that, Major, what avenues, if any, does the rest of the field have to hit him?
Well, most of the criticism of Donald Trump here is that he is an inconsistent or late-to-the-game conservative, to question his whole approach to politics and the issues that people in South Carolina who are Republicans tend to care about. But if that poll is true and it's consistent with other polls, Trump outlasts everyone in this field on the big three: economy, national security, and ability to handle a crisis. There is some vulnerability on social issues, and you see a lot of the radio and the pop-up ads on digital platforms and on local television. They do try to question Trump's social conservatism, his authenticity on the abortion question, and things of that nature. But any campaign will tell you, if you're leading in the polls and you have 3 of the 4 top issues, and you're leading in all 3 of those 4 decisively, you'll take that hand and probably win. And the Trump campaign not only feels very confident about what's going to happen on Saturday, most Republicans I talk to here, not in the Trump camp, also expect Trump to win.
Major, one last question. Turning to the Democrats and back to President Obama's news conference, it was interesting. He was asked about the contest between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. He declined to provide a full-throated endorsement of either, and it was interesting to not see the endorsement there for Hillary Clinton, or at least something more than what he did say. Could part of his hesitancy maybe be because he's thinking if he does in fact speak up on behalf of Hillary Clinton, that might boost Bernie Sanders supporters who would point to that and say, aha, that is evidence that Hillary Clinton is the establishment candidate?
In this one respect, I do feel sympathy for the president, because every word he says about Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton is sifted to its granularly fine powder, down to the last sort of smallest bit of matter. Every word, every intonation, everything he says, because everyone wants to know, who do you support? Presidential neutrality in contested party primaries is a long-standing American tradition. President Obama is not going to break that. He also knows this is a genuinely real contest. Iowa and New Hampshire prove that. And he doesn't want to suggest in any way, shape, or form that he has a preference or the party ought to have a preference. The president knows that Hillary Clinton has a lot of superdelegates within the Democratic Party. Those are sort of the party insiders. They have lined up with Hillary in larger numbers, far larger numbers than Bernie Sanders, but he's going to leave that where it is, not get involved with that, not even comment about that obvious fact, and stay away. That's why the president found it much more to his advantage, both in the context of the Republican conversation now and a general election in the future, to speak much more enthusiastically, at least from a commentary point of view, about Donald Trump.
Enthusiastic he was. All right, Major Garrett, thank you so much.